So, to begin, there are times, as for many of us these times, where there are a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions that come with being alive, come with being part of this fragile world that we all share, fragile earth and fragile, especially the fragile personal lives that we're here for a few years and then we're not. And all that journey of a lifetime and our journey on this planet has its perils and its challenges and its losses and its gains, its joys and its sorrows. And so mindfulness practice is meant to include all of this. And the remarkable discovery that is every individual's discovery, not necessarily easy to come to, is that mindfulness, the awareness that we can abide in, the awareness perhaps that I kind of feel sometimes just emanates from my body, more than the mind, is will hold it all, has space for it all. And especially true if we could switch our locus, our center of how we're oriented to this life, from the story-making mind to the lived experience, lived embodied experience, here. So to recognize, maybe just simply close your eyes if you're comfortable with that, and then recognize how you're feeling at this time. And if it's possible, see if you can give yourself infinite permission to feel how you are, but not so much to keep telling stories about anything, but deeper than the stories, to give permission for how you are to exist within your body. Perhaps even relaxing the thinking muscle, letting perhaps the weary, ongoing chatter of the mind be allowed to take a rest, to allow the thinking mind to be reassured that for these minutes it's okay to dwell in the living experience of the present moment, the lived experience of being in a body, and with a global awareness of your body. Perhaps having your awareness, your sensations, your sense of your body be broad and wide, outwards from the center to the skin all around, and everything in between. And whatever those living sensations are, especially the sensations or the activity or the energy of what you're feeling emotionally, see if you can relax around it. Perhaps with a simple statement, "It's okay." And then perhaps if there's easy ways that you can soften, relax your muscles as you exhale, to soften the muscles of your face. As you exhale, to relax your shoulders, feeling your shoulders as you inhale, and softening them as you exhale. Sometimes with softening, relaxing the shoulders, there can be a feeling of settling around or within how you are. As you exhale, softening in the chest. As you exhale, softening the belly. Perhaps at the end of the exhale, if you don't breathe in right away, but in that pause, just for a moment, let the belly relax a little bit more. A settling of the belly. And if you're comfortable to do so, see if you can align yourself, enter into the experience of your torso breathing. The lived experience that's only happening in the present, of the torso expanding, lifting as you breathe in. The torso falling or contracting as you breathe out. From the beginning of the inhale, as if it begins at a singular point, maybe. The inhale grows and expands through the torso, moving outwards, filling the body. And in the exhale, there's a return to that singular point where the breath begins and ends. And that movement, expansion and contraction of the torso can be like a massage for however you're feeling. Almost as if breathing is making breathing room for however you are. Not to make a problem of anything, but to give it permission to be there, but to be caressed or massaged, cared for, with each inhale and exhale. That gives it lots of room, so much room for how you're feeling, that it's okay to feel what you have. And in the middle of it all is the breathing, and a calming and a settling, a quieting of the thinking mind, a coming home to the center of your being. remembering that you don't have to make the center of your life what you're thinking about. Thinking doesn't have to be the center. Thinking is important sometimes, but in meditation, thinking can be at the periphery, letting the body, the breathing body, be at the center. That place that has room for all things. And then as we come to the end of this sitting, to whatever degree you're able to allow how you're feeling, just to be a feeling. To whatever degree you can allow your breathing to, in a sense, give breathing room to your emotions and how you are. And you can give it permission to be. For a few minutes in meditation, to have lots of room for how you feel without needing to fix it or change it or judge it or react to it, just to be. Lots of breathing room. In the same way, as you inhale and exhale, can you expand your breathing, your sense of awareness, as if it could spread out across the land? And that somehow with the wide range of the rhythm of breathing, your awareness spreads and massages and opens to mixed breathing room for the whole world, with all its suffering and joys, with all the distress and challenges that people are experiencing, all the successes and happiness and love that people have. To somehow let your awareness, your permissive awareness, be wide and expansive for a few moments, to hold the whole globe as part of your lived experience of the moment that's allowed to be there. And then as if you are in fact intimate with the whole world and all the joys and sorrows, offer your care, offer your kindness, your caregiving, where you care for the welfare and happiness of everyone. As if everyone is in fact your family, your community, your fellow human being and fellow living being, so that our awareness reaches out and touches all of it with a tender kindness, caringness. And may it be that our care for the world finds some expression today through our words, our deeds, or our thoughts, our loving kindness. May all beings be nourished and supported by our mutual care for each other. May all beings be happy. So good morning, and today I'm going to give the third Dharma on the wisdom faculty. And the form of wisdom to be discussed today is what I call decisive wisdom. Wisdom that can make a decision. Wisdom that could choose very clearly what to say, what to do, and also what to do, how to be with our inner life. So the idea that as we sit and practice and become wise, one of the first things that really helps this process is to develop greater clarity in the mind, to have ability to be mindful and clearly aware what's going on. And the clearer we can be, the less we're projecting our opinions, our fears, our associations, our all our kind of confusion onto the world. And we can see more clearly what's happening. As we see more clearly, we make distinctions. Or I don't know if we make distinctions, we just see more clearly that we differentiate the different details of what's happening in the moment, the different parts of it. And that's the distinguishing wisdom I talked about yesterday. As we start making more and more distinctions, as we see different differences, we start seeing not only what's skillful and not skillful, what's helpful and not helpful in the moment, but we also start seeing having a understanding of the consequences of our actions. That we start registering, because we're clear and we're tracking what's going on, we notice that when we say X, that the communication lines with other people tends to close down, or they become more distant from us. If we say Y, the communication lines are open. People may even come forward to participate more. And after a while, we see the differences in how we speak, and that certain ways have some result, and others have different results. And that seeing that clearly then allows us to see the choice. Do I say X next time, or do I say Y? Decisive wisdom is the wisdom that knows what's the wise thing to do, based on what's important for us. As we settle and get clearer and clearer, we also become in touch with our values and the capacity for freedom, the capacity to live in an open, uncontracted, uncompulsive kind of way. And so both we see the consequences of how we speak on the impact it has on others, and we see the consequences of how we speak it has on ourselves. Same thing with our actions. What we do in the world, we start seeing the consequences of it. And those consequences, as they register in our clarity and our care, we see that there's a choice. We can do something that creates health or dis-ease in social relationships. We can do things that are supporting and nourishing for our inner life, or do things which actually keep us more kind of agitated or more contracted or caught. As these things are seen more and more, it isn't just that we're supposed to just accept it and see it and allow it. There is a time and place for decisive wisdom, to make a decision. The image of that's used in Mahayana Buddhism is sometimes they talk about the sword of wisdom. Sometimes you want to use that sword. And one of the ways to use it sometimes is with a very clear, decisive no. No, not that. And hopefully we have the wisdom to know when that's actually supportive, useful, and even nourishing to do that. And that's sometimes clearest in our own meditation practice. And that's why meditation is such a great laboratory to start seeing and learning about all these forms of wisdom. If you're sitting in meditation and you start becoming clear to you how much you're thinking, and how much you're thinking the same kinds of thoughts over and over again, after a while you realize you've had the same thought 500 times. And nothing's really changed, except the thought is rather mean-spirited towards yourself. And here you go, maybe, the same thought again and again. And after a while you realize, wait a minute, this thought doesn't have a good impact on me. It's not healthy. And there's not much point to repeat the same thought 501 times. There's, nothing changes, just kind of going around and around. At some point, the sword of wisdom can come along, and sometimes you say, no, enough, very clearly. Sometimes it's like the thinking mind, parts of it, at least for some of us, not for all of you, at times is like a little 3-year-old. And I've learned that sometimes 3-year-olds need to have a very decisive no. It was hard for me to come to with my children, but once I learned the right way to say, no, you can't do that, they became happier. It was kind of like they were pushing the edges to find out where they were safe, and when they heard that no more of that, then they immediately relaxed and became happy. It was quite impressive to see. And so I think sometimes our mind needs to hear that clear no. No more of that kind of thinking. Probably it'll come back, but then we say, use the sword of no again. In the same way, we use, I don't know, maybe we don't call it a sword of yes, but maybe wisdom has a I don't know, something very supportive. And sometimes what we do is say definitive yes. Yes, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to make my life about. These values, this freedom, this possibility of not being caught in contractions, compulsion. Yes, this is what I want. This is important. And, for some people, the Dharma practice is the most important thing in their life. And they say yes to it at the cost of everything else, because this is clearly what's most important. Maybe like an artist who decides that art is the most important, and they'll be starving artists. There are Dharma practitioners who become, not starving Dharma practitioners, but that they really say yes to something. So it's a decisive wisdom. Or decisive wisdom or how we speak. Yes, I want to appreciate this person. I want to say, oh boy, you've worked hard, and I really appreciate what you've done. And to say yes to that, as opposed to kind of like just, not saying anything perhaps. So this idea of decisive wisdom comes really clearly into play around what in Buddhism is called the Four Noble Truths. And this is one of the key wisdom teachings of Buddhism. And it involves seeing distinctions. It involves seeing very clearly what in Buddhism is called suffering. Very clearly what is the causes, the conditions, what contributes to the suffering. And clearly seeing, sometimes intuitively at first, and then more and more through experience, that there is the amazing possibility of having suffering end. Sometimes it's in small pieces, it's partial, but to start getting a sense, wow, I'm not locked in. It's not required to suffer so much. There is another way. And then to see the practices that support that possibility. To really see that clearly. And to make it a little bit maybe helpful for people, maybe simplify this Four Noble Truths. It's the statement that if there's craving, you will suffer. That craving itself is a form of suffering. The compulsions, the clinging, the resistance. That word craving kind of has to do with compulsions, where we don't really have freedom anymore to choose, but where there's a push, a pulse, a pushing, compulsion to say, to speak, to act, and to think certain things that we feel like we're being carried along and we're contracted and caught and in a way that causes a lot of suffering. Suffering that we're talking about here is not all the ways in which the heart gets broken, all the ways in which we can feel sorrow or sadness or feel even hurt sometimes. What we're talking about here is the kind of suffering that arises because we crave, because of this compulsivity. And as we start seeing this operating more and more, and seeing how our craving, our clinging, our resistance, our pushing away, our hostility, our greed, our, whatever it is we're holding on to, our conceit that we're holding on to, if we're clinging to anything at all, it's going to hurt us. We're going to suffer. And decisive wisdom, distinguishing wisdom, sees all that. Decisive wisdom says, no more. I'm going to live a different way. This is not for me. I'm now going to disavow myself from the investment, the commitment, the authority I've granted to my craving and my clinging. This is not how I want to live my life. It can be a very clear decision. It doesn't mean that we stop by any means, but it's a world of difference to make that shift. It's kind of like the same shift as to really go for refuge. Yes, it's possible to live in a way that is not caught in the grip of attachments and caught in the grip of fear, where we're attached or holding on to something. And then seeing the choice, as we start seeing the choice, it's not easy to let go of craving, but as we start seeing the choice that exists, there it is. I don't have to stay with my attachment to drive fast and to, rev the car waiting at a red stop sign. In that small places of impatience, that's small kinds of cravings. Learn to let go. Learn to let go. Learn to let go. Or learn to recognize the freedom. Learn to recognize the peace that's available. And in a very wise way, we're talking about wisdom here, wisdom that's always healthy for us. So that's kind of the caveat. The wisdom is always healthy, always nourishing. That we find a way, decisive wisdom says, no, maybe with all the love we're capable of, all the care, no, I'm not going to crave. I'm not going to do that. I'm no longer going to stand behind it or feed it. Or the decisive wisdom says, yes. Yes to being free. Yes to touching into the place inside where I care and love or the world. So, decisive wisdom. And then because we're still always doing the distinguishing wisdom, it's really always there's a check and balance that's going on. That we're using mindfulness to see, to understand, to feel, to experience. When our decisive wisdom is a little bit off, when that sort of wisdom is not really kind or not really supportive, when the no is not really the right way, it's a little bit hostile perhaps, or when the yes is too accepting or too complacent or too kind of going along with the status quo in a way that's not healthy for people. So hopefully these two work together, the distinguishing wisdom that sees clearly and the decisive wisdom that helps us find our way on the path to freedom. May these two forms of wisdom support you and guide you, and I look forward to continuing these sequence about wisdom tomorrow.